The champagne glass hit the marble floor and shattered into 1,000 pieces. But no one looked down. Every eye in the restaurant was on the woman standing by the corner table. Her hands were trembling. Her apron was still tied around her waist. And when she opened her mouth, the first note that came out made the entire room go silent. It was Eben, Nandro Lantana from Lawali. Pure, clear, heartbreaking. The kind of voice that doesn't just fill a room. It fills every empty space inside you that you forgot was there. At the center table, a man sat frozen. His fork was halfway to his mouth. His daughter, no more than 7 years old, had her small hand pressed to her chest. His son, a boy of 10, was staring with his mouth open. The man's name was James Ashford. He was 49 years old. He owned 3 hotels and a vineyard in Napa Valley. He wore custom suits and Italian shoes. He had everything except the one thing he'd lost 15 years ago. A reason to feel alive. And now this waitress, this woman in a simple black uniform with her hair pulled back in a bun, was singing an aria he had only heard once before in his life. The night he proposed to someone else. It had started as a joke. James had been sitting with his children at the best table in Marcello's, the kind of restaurant where you needed a reservation 3 months in advance. It was their first dinner out since the divorce was finalized. He wanted it to be special. He wanted them to feel like things would be okay. But his daughter Lily had been quiet all evening, and his son Ben kept looking at his phone under the table. James had tried. He really had. He'd asked about school, about friends, about what they wanted to do this summer. But the answers were short, polite, distant. So when the waiter came by and asked if they wanted to hear about the dessert menu, James had said yes, even though none of them were hungry. That's when he saw her. The waitress. She was refilling water glasses at the table next to theirs. She moved quietly, almost like she didn't want to be noticed. But James noticed. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because of the way she held herself. Like she was carrying something heavy, but she wasn't going to let anyone see it. She reminded him of someone. He didn't know who. When she came to their table, she smiled. It was a small smile, the kind people give when they've learned not to expect much. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked. Her voice was soft, calm. Lily looked up at her. "Do you like working here?" James blinked. His daughter hadn't asked a question like that in months. The waitress paused. Then she crouched down, just a little, so she was at Lily's eye level. "I do," she said. "I get to meet all kinds of people. And sometimes, I get to see families having a good time together. That makes me happy." Lily nodded slowly. "We're not having a good time." James felt his chest tighten. The waitress didn't look uncomfortable. She just nodded, like Lily had said something very wise. "That's okay," she said gently. "Some days are like that. But you're here. And that counts for something." Ben looked up from his phone. James stared at this woman, this stranger, and felt something crack open inside him. "Do you sing?" he heard himself say. She blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Sing," James repeated. He didn't know why he was asking. "You have the voice of someone who sings." She smiled, but it was sad. "I used to." "Opera?" Now she looked surprised. "Yes. A long time ago." James leaned back in his chair. He felt reckless. Desperate. Like if he didn't do something right now, this entire evening, this entire year, would just be another stretch of empty time. "I'll make you a deal," he said. The waitress tilted her head. "If you can sing an aria, right here, right now, I'll leave you a tip that'll cover a month's rent." Her smile faded. "Sir, and if it's one of the arias from La Wali," he continued, his voice quiet now, almost a whisper, "I'll marry you." The restaurant noise seemed to dim. Lily's eyes went wide. Ben looked up, fully present for the first time all night. The waitress stared at James. Her face was unreadable. "You're joking," she said. "I'm not. You don't even know me." "No," James agreed. "But I know what it sounds like when someone's given up something they loved. And I'm tired of watching people give up." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she untied her apron. "What are you doing?" he asked. "If I'm going to do this," she said, "I'm not doing it as a waitress." She walked to the center of the room. She didn't ask permission. She didn't announce herself. She just stood there, in the middle of Marcello's, and closed her eyes. And then she began to sing. The first note was so pure, it made James's hands go cold. "Eben, Nandro Lantana." She sang it in Italian. Her voice was not loud, but it carried. It moved through the room like water, filling every corner, every silence. People stopped eating. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the kitchen staff came to the doorway to listen. James couldn't move. He felt like he'd been struck by lightning. Because he knew this Aria. He knew it. 15 years ago, he'd taken his ex-wife to the opera. It was their first year of marriage. She'd hated it. She'd checked her phone the entire time. But James had sat there, listening to a soprano sing this exact piece, and he'd felt something he couldn't name. Longing, maybe. Or loss. He'd never heard it again. Until now. The waitress sang with her eyes closed. Her hands were at her sides. She wasn't performing. She was just singing. Like she'd forgotten where she was. Like the song was the only thing that mattered. Lily reached over and took James's hand. He looked down at his daughter. There were tears on her cheeks. "Daddy," she whispered. "She's so sad." James squeezed her hand. Because Lily was right. The song was about leaving. About going far away. About loving something so much that you had to let it go. And the woman singing it looked like she understood every single word. When the final note faded, the silence lasted for 3 full seconds. Then the applause started. It was thunderous. People stood. They clapped. Someone shouted, "Brava!" But the waitress didn't smile. She just opened her eyes, looked straight at James, and walked back to his table. She placed her apron on the chair. "I don't want your money," she said quietly. James stood up. "I wasn't joking." "I know." "Then why?" "Because you don't marry someone after one song," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "You marry someone when you know who they are. When you've seen them on their worst days. When you've chosen them, over and over again." James stared at her. "Who are you?" he asked. She smiled. It was the saddest smile he'd ever seen. "My name is Elena," she said. "And I gave up opera 15 years ago because I thought love was more important." "Was it?" She looked at Lily. Then at Ben. "I don't know yet," she said. Then she turned and walked toward the kitchen. James sat down slowly. His heart was pounding. Lily looked up at him. "Are you really going to marry her?" "I don't know, sweetheart." "I think you should," Ben said. James looked at his son in surprise. Ben shrugged. "She made you look alive for the first time in a year." And James realized his 10-year-old son was right. James tried to find her after that night. He went back to Marcello's the next day. He asked for Elena. But the manager, a short man with slick back hair, just shook his head. "She doesn't work here anymore," he said. "What do you mean?" "She quit. Last night. Right after her shift." James felt something sink in his chest. Did she say where she was going? No. She just said thank you and left. James stood in the middle of the restaurant, feeling like an idiot. He'd offered to marry a woman he didn't know. A woman who'd sung one song and then disappeared. What had he been thinking? But when he got home that night, Lily was waiting for him at the door. "Did you find her?" she asked. James shook his head. Lily's face fell. "But you have to, Daddy." "Why?" "Because she was magic." James crouched down. "Sweetheart, she was just a woman. A very talented woman. But just a woman." "No," Lily said firmly. "She was magic. I felt it." Ben appeared at the top of the stairs. "Lily's right. You need to find her." James looked at his children. Really looked at them. They were different. Just from one night. One song. They were awake. "Okay," he said. "I'll try." James didn't hire a private investigator. He didn't put out ads or post on social media. Instead, he did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He went to the opera. He bought 3 tickets to the San Francisco Opera's production of Tosca. He took Lily and Ben with him. They sat in the balcony, and James watched the stage, hoping irrationally that he might see Elena up there. But she wasn't there. After the show, he asked the house manager if they knew of any former sopranos named Elena who used to perform in the area. The manager frowned. Elena. There was an Elena Rossi. She was incredible. She was going to be the next big thing. But she quit suddenly. Maybe 15 years ago. I heard she got married. James felt his pulse quicken. "Do you know where she is now?" The manager shook his head. "Sorry, but you could try the conservatory. They keep records." So James went to the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. He spoke to the registrar. He explained awkwardly that he was looking for a former student named Elena Rossi. The registrar, an older woman with kind eyes, looked at him for a long moment. "Are you family?" she asked. "No." "Then I can't give you personal information." James nodded. He'd expected that. But as he turned to leave, the woman called after him. "She was one of the best students we ever had," she said quietly. "She had a gift. A real gift. But she left before she graduated. We all wondered what happened to her. Do you know why she left? The woman hesitated. I heard she fell in love, and she chose him over her career. James felt something cold settle in his stomach. Do you know if it worked out? He asked. The woman's expression was answer enough. For 2 weeks, James searched. He visited every restaurant, every cafe, every music store in the city. He asked if anyone knew an Elena Rossi, a singer, a woman in her early 40s with dark hair and a voice that could break your heart. Most people said no. A few said maybe. One woman, a cashier at a bookstore, said, I think she teaches piano lessons. Over on Valencia Street. James went to Valencia Street. He walked up and down the block, looking for a music studio, a sign, anything. And then he heard it. Piano music, coming from a second-floor window. And a voice singing scales. A child's voice. James stood on the sidewalk, looking up. The window was open. White curtains moved in the breeze. He climbed the stairs. He knocked on the door. The music stopped. Footsteps. The door opened. And there she was. Elena. She was wearing jeans and a sweater. Her hair was down. She looked younger somehow. And tired. When she saw James, her eyes widened. How did you find me? She asked. I looked, he said simply. They stood there, staring at each other. From inside the apartment, a small voice called out. Miss Elena? Are we done? Elena glanced back. 1 more minute, sweetie. She stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. I know. I'm not the person you think I am. Then tell me who you are. She looked at him. Really looked at him. Why does it matter? She asked. Because you sang, James said. And for the first time in a year, my children looked happy. For the first time in a year, I felt something other than empty. Elena closed her eyes. That's not fair. I'm not trying to be fair. I'm trying to be honest. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she opened her eyes. If I tell you, she said, will you leave me alone? James hesitated. Then he nodded. Elena sighed. She leaned against the wall. I was 26 when I gave up singing, she said. I was at the conservatory. I was supposed to audition for the Met. I had everything lined up. And then I met David. She paused. He was a lawyer. Smart. Handsome. He said he loved me. He said I didn't need to perform in front of strangers to prove I was talented. He said I could sing for him. Just for him. And I believed him. James felt his jaw tighten. So I quit, Elena continued. I married him. We moved to Sacramento. I thought we'd have a life. A family. But David didn't want children. He wanted a wife who stayed home and looked beautiful and didn't ask for too much. She smiled bitterly. I didn't sing for 10 years, she said. Not once. He said it made him uncomfortable. He said I was showing off. So I stopped. What happened? James asked quietly. I woke up one day and realized I didn't recognize myself anymore, Elena said. So I left. I came back to San Francisco. I got a job waiting tables. I started teaching piano to kids. And I told myself that was enough. But it's not, James said. Elena looked at him. No, she admitted. It's not. James didn't leave her alone. He couldn't. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he brought Lily to Elena's studio for piano lessons. At first, Elena was hesitant. I don't usually teach children this young, she said. But Lily had looked up at her with those wide, hopeful eyes and said, Please? I want to learn the song you sang. And Elena had melted. So Lily learned piano. And James sat in the corner of the studio watching. He watched the way Elena's hands moved over the keys. The way she hummed along with Lily's playing. The way she smiled when Lily got a difficult passage right. He watched the way she looked out the window when she thought no one was looking. Like she was searching for something far away. After the third lesson, James asked her to have coffee with him. I don't think that's a good idea, Elena said. Why not? Because you're a client. I'm a parent. You know what I mean. James smiled. 1 coffee. That's all. Elena hesitated. Then she said yes. They went to a small cafe on the corner. The kind of place with mismatched chairs and chipped mugs. Elena ordered tea. James ordered black coffee. They sat by the window. Tell me about your children, Elena said. So James did. He told her about Lily, who loved drawing and was afraid of the dark. He told her about Ben, who was quiet and thoughtful and missed his mother even though he wouldn't admit it. Why did you get divorced? Elena asked gently. James looked down at his coffee. Because I built a life, he said. But I forgot to build a marriage. Elena nodded slowly. I worked all the time, James continued. I thought if I could just make enough money, if I could just give them everything, that would be enough. But it wasn't. My wife felt alone. I felt alone. And one day we looked at each other and realized we were strangers. Do you regret it? Elena asked. Every day, James said honestly. But not because I miss her. Because I see what it's done to my kids. Elena was quiet. You're a good father, she said finally. How do you know? Because you're trying. Most people don't even do that. James looked at her. What about you? Do you want children? Elena's expression shifted. Became distant. I did, she said. Once. But David didn't. And by the time I left, I thought it was too late. It's not, James said. Elena smiled sadly. I'm 43 years old. I teach piano in a tiny apartment. I'm not exactly mother material. That's not true. You don't know me. Then let me. Elena looked at him. Her eyes were dark and deep and full of old pain. Why? She asked. Why do you care? James leaned forward. Because when you sang that night, he said quietly, it was the first time in years I felt like I was listening to someone tell the truth. And I'm tired of people who lie. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of being numb. Elena's breath caught. I can't save you, she whispered. I'm not asking you to, James said. I'm just asking you to let me know you. They started seeing each other. Not dating. Not officially. But they'd have coffee after Lily's lessons. They'd walk through the park. They'd talk about music and art and all the small things that make up a life. James learned that Elena loved old movies, that she cried during commercials with dogs in them, that she still dreamed about singing, even though she told herself she'd moved on. Elena learned that James had wanted to be a writer when he was young, that he still wrote in a journal every morning, even though he'd never shown anyone, that he was scared of failing his children the way he'd failed his marriage. Slowly, carefully, they became friends. And then, one afternoon in late spring, something shifted. They were sitting on a bench near the bay. The sun was setting. The water was turning gold. Elena was quiet. What are you thinking about? James asked. She smiled. Do you really want to know? Always. She took a breath. I'm thinking about that night at the restaurant, when you said you'd marry me if I sang. James felt his heart skip. I thought you were crazy, Elena continued. Or cruel. Or maybe just drunk. I wasn't any of those things. I know, she said. She turned to look at him. So why did you say it? James was quiet for a long moment. Because I saw you, he said finally. Really saw you. And I thought, if a person like that exists, a person who's given up everything and still has that much beauty inside them, then maybe I haven't given up everything either. Elena's eyes filled with tears. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, she whispered. James reached over and took her hand. I meant it, he said. I still mean it. Elena looked down at their hands. Hers was small and pale. His was larger, rougher. I'm scared, she said. Of what? Of wanting something again. Of trying and failing. James squeezed her hand gently. What if you try and succeed? Elena laughed, but it was a broken sound. I don't know if I remember how. Then we'll figure it out together. That night, James told his children about Elena. They were sitting at the dinner table. Ben was pushing pasta around his plate. Lily was drawing on a napkin. I need to tell you something, James said. Both kids looked up. I've been spending time with Miss Elena, he said. Outside of piano lessons. And I think I have feelings for her. Lily's face lit up. You love her. I didn't say that. But you do, right? James smiled. Maybe. I don't know yet. But I wanted you to know. Because if this goes somewhere, it's going to affect all of us. Ben was quiet. Ben? James asked. What do you think? His son looked down. Does Mom know? Not yet. Is Miss Elena going to be our stepmom? I don't know. Maybe. Someday. If things work out. Ben nodded slowly. Okay. Just okay. Ben looked up. His eyes were older than they should have been. Dad, he said quietly, you've been sad for a really long time. And Miss Elena makes you smile. So if she makes you happy, then it's okay. James felt his throat tighten. Come here, he said. Ben stood up and walked over. James pulled him into a hug. Lily scrambled out of her chair and joined them. They stood there, the three of them, holding on to each other. And James thought, maybe we're going to be okay. Maybe we're going to be more than okay. 2 weeks later, James asked Elena to come to dinner at his house. She was nervous. He could tell by the way she kept adjusting her necklace. They already love you, James said as they walked up the front steps. They love me as a piano teacher, Elena said. This is different. It's going to be fine. But when Elena walked through the door, she stopped. The walls were covered in paintings. Lily's paintings. Bright, wild, colorful explosions of imagination. Oh, Elena breathed. Lily ran up to her. Do you like them? I love them, Elena said. She crouched down. You made all of these? Lily nodded proudly. Elena looked at each painting carefully. This one, she said, pointing to a picture of a woman with wings. Is this me? Lily blushed. Maybe. Elena smiled. It's beautiful. And just like that, the nervousness was gone. They had dinner. Spaghetti and meatballs. Nothing fancy. But they laughed. They talked. Ben told a joke that didn't quite make sense, and everyone laughed anyway. After dinner, Lily asked Elena if she would sing. Oh, I don't think. Please, Lily said. Just one song. Elena looked at James. He smiled. Only if you want to. Elena was quiet. Then she nodded. She stood in the living room. No piano. No accompaniment. She sang O mio babino caro. It was softer than the aria at the restaurant. Gentler. Like a lullaby. Lily sat on the couch, her eyes wide. Ben stood by the window listening. James closed his eyes and let the music wash over him. When Elena finished, Lily clapped her hands together. You're magic, she said. Elena laughed, and there were tears in her eyes. Thank you, sweetheart. That night, after Elena left, Lily crawled into James's lap. I like her, Daddy, she said. Me too, baby. Are you going to marry her? James smiled. Maybe. Someday. I hope you do, Lily said. She yawned. She feels like home. And James realized that was exactly what Elena felt like. Home. But it wasn't easy. It never is. 1 month into their relationship, Elena pulled back. She stopped answering James's calls. She canceled 2 of Lily's lessons. When James finally showed up at her apartment, she opened the door but wouldn't let him in. I can't do this, she said. Do what? This. Us. I thought I could, but I can't. James felt panic rise in his chest. Why not? Because I'm broken, James. I gave up everything once for a man, and it destroyed me. I can't do that again. I'm not asking you to give up anything. Yes, you are. You're asking me to try. To hope. To believe that this might work. And I don't know if I can survive it if it doesn't. James stood in the hallway, his heart pounding. Elena, he said quietly, I'm scared too. She looked up at him. I'm terrified, he continued. I've already failed 1 marriage. I've already hurt people I love. And the idea of failing you, failing my kids, it keeps me up at night. Elena's eyes were wet. But you know what scares me more? James said. Not trying. Spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. Elena closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek. I'm not strong enough, she whispered. Yes, you are, James said. He stepped closer. You walked away from a man who tried to silence you. You rebuilt your life from nothing. You teach children how to find their voice. You're the strongest person I know. Elena sobbed. James reached out and took her hand. Let me in, he said softly. Please. For a long moment, Elena didn't move. Then she stepped back and opened the door. That night, they talked until 3 in the morning. Elena told him everything. She told him about the years with David. The small cruelties. The way he'd made her feel small. The way she'd lost herself piece by piece until she didn't know who she was anymore. She told him about the day she finally left. How she'd packed 1 suitcase and walked out while David was at work. How she'd sat in a bus station for 4 hours, crying, unsure if she'd made the right choice. She told him about the years after. The loneliness. The nights she'd wake up and wonder if anyone would ever love her again. James listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix anything. He just listened. And when she was finished, he said, Thank you for trusting me. Elena looked at him. You're not going to run? Why would I run? Because I'm a mess. James smiled. We're all a mess. But maybe we can be a mess together. Elena laughed. It was a real laugh, full and bright. Okay, she said. Okay. Let's be a mess together. After that night, things changed. Elena stopped pulling away. She started coming to dinner twice a week. She joined them for movie nights and trips to the park. She became part of their life. Lily adored her. She'd hold Elena's hand when they walked. She'd ask her opinion on everything from what dress to wear to what color the sky should be in her paintings. Ben was slower to warm up. But one afternoon, James found them sitting together on the porch, talking quietly. When he asked what they were talking about, Ben just shrugged and said, Stuff. But later, Elena told him. He asked me if I was going to leave, she said quietly. What did you say? I told him the truth. That I'm scared sometimes, but that I'm trying not to be, and that I care about all of you too much to just walk away. James pulled her close. Thank you. For what? For being honest with him. For not making promises you can't keep. Elena rested her head against his chest. I'm trying, James. I really am. I know, he said. And that's enough. 6 months after that first night at the restaurant, Elena got a phone call. It was from the San Francisco Opera House. They were doing a special benefit concert, a tribute to female sopranos, and they wanted Elena to perform. When she told James, her hands were shaking. They found me somehow, she said. They said they've been looking for me for years. They want me to sing Eben? Nandro Lontana. James stared at her. What did you say? I said I'd think about it. Elena, this is incredible. It's terrifying. James took her hands. You can do this. I haven't performed in 15 years. So, you still have the voice. What if I fail? Then you fail. But at least you tried. Elena looked at him. What if people laugh? They won't, James said firmly. And even if they did, who cares? You'll be doing something you love. That's what matters. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, she said. I'll do it. The next 8 weeks were chaos. Elena practiced every day. She hired a vocal coach. She worked on her breathing, her posture, her Italian pronunciation. James watched her transform. She stood taller. She smiled more. There was a light in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Lily asked if she could come to the performance. It's going to be late, sweetheart, Elena said. I don't care. I want to see you sing on a real stage. Elena looked at James. He nodded. Okay, Elena said. You can come. The night of the performance, James put on his best suit. Ben wore a button-down shirt. Lily wore a blue velvet dress that she'd insisted was fancy enough for the opera. They arrived at the opera house an hour early. The lobby was filled with people in gowns and tuxedos. Chandeliers sparkled overhead. Lily's eyes were huge. It's like a palace, she whispered. James took her hand. Come on. Let's find our seats. They had seats in the orchestra section, 5th row center. The lights dimmed. The conductor walked out. The audience applauded. And then the music began. There were 5 sopranos performing that night. Each one sang an aria. They were all good. But when Elena walked onto the stage, everything changed. She wore a simple black gown. Her hair was pulled back. She looked elegant, graceful, terrified. James could see her hands shaking. The orchestra began to play. Elena closed her eyes. She took a breath. And then she sang. Eben, Nandro Lontana. Her voice filled the hall. It was richer than it had been at the restaurant. Fuller. Like she'd finally let herself take up space. James felt tears on his face. Beside him, Lily was crying too. She reached over and took his hand. On the other side, Ben was staring at the stage, his mouth slightly open. Elena sang about leaving. About distance. About love that hurts so much you have to let it go. But when James looked at her face, he didn't see sadness. He saw freedom. When the final note ended, there was a beat of silence. Then the entire opera house erupted. People stood. They cheered. They shouted brava. Elena opened her eyes. She looked out at the audience. And then she looked directly at James. She smiled. A real smile. The kind that said, I did it. I'm here. I'm alive. James smiled back. And in that moment he knew. He was going to marry this woman. 3 months later, James asked Elena to marry him. He didn't do it with a big proposal. No flash mob. No skywriting. He did it on a Tuesday afternoon in her apartment while she was making tea. Elena, he said. She turned around. Marry me. She blinked. What? Marry me, he said again. He walked over to her. I know it's fast. I know we've only been together for 9 months. But I love you. And I don't want to waste any more time. Elena set down the teacup. Her hands were shaking. James, you don't have to answer right now, he said quickly. I know it's a lot. I know you're scared. But I need you to know that I'm sure. I'm more sure of this than I've been of anything in my life. Elena's eyes filled with tears. What about the kids? She asked. They want this. They love you. What about your ex-wife? She's moved on. She's happy. This has nothing to do with her. What if I fail you? Elena whispered. What if I'm not enough? James took her face in his hands. You are enough, he said. You've always been enough. And I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you know that. Elena sobbed. Is that a yes? James asked gently. She nodded. Yes. Yes, it's a yes. James kissed her. It was soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Elena was smiling through her tears. I can't believe this is real, she said. It's real, James said. I promise. They got married 6 months later. It was a small ceremony. Just family and close friends. They held it in a garden overlooking the bay. The sun was setting. The sky was pink and gold. Lily was the flower girl. She took her job very seriously, dropping petals with intense concentration. Ben was the ring bearer. He looked uncomfortable in his suit, but he smiled when James thanked him. When Elena walked down the aisle, James forgot how to breathe. She wore a simple white dress. Her hair was down. She carried a bouquet of wildflowers. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. When she reached him, she was crying. Hi, she whispered. Hi, James said. The officiant, an old friend of James's, smiled. We are gathered here today, he began. But James barely heard the words. He was too busy looking at Elena, at the woman who had sung in a restaurant and changed his life, at the woman who had been broken and had learned to be whole again, at the woman he was going to spend the rest of his life loving. When it was time for vows, Elena went first. James, she said, her voice shaking, you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. You gave me hope. You saw me when I was invisible. You loved me when I didn't know how to love myself. And I promised to spend the rest of my life being brave enough to deserve that. James felt tears on his face. Elena, he said, I asked you to sing, and you gave me everything. You gave me joy. You gave my children a reason to smile again. You gave me a future I didn't think I could have. And I promised to love you every single day. Not just on the easy days, but on the hard days. On the days when you forget how strong you are. I'll be there to remind you. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. James leaned in and kissed Elena. The small crowd cheered. Lily threw flower petals in the air. Ben clapped, grinning. And when James and Elena pulled apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. We did it, Elena whispered. We did, James said. The years that followed weren't perfect. There were hard days. Days when Elena doubted herself. Days when James worked too much and came home exhausted. Days when the kids fought or struggled at school. But there were more good days than bad. Elena started performing again. Small concerts at first. Then bigger venues. She never became a star. But she didn't need to be. She sang because she loved it. And that was enough. James sold one of his hotels and started a foundation for children's music education. He wanted other kids to have what Lily and Ben had. A chance to find their voice. Lily grew up to be an artist. She had her first gallery show when she was 23. Elena and James went to the opening and cried when they saw a painting Lily had made of the three of them. Ben became a teacher. He taught music at a high school in Oakland. He said Elena had inspired him. And Elena and James? They grew old together. They took walks every morning. They drank coffee on the porch. They went to the opera once a month and held hands in the dark. On their 10th anniversary, James surprised Elena with a trip back to Marcello's. They sat at the same table where he'd first heard her sing. Do you remember this place? James asked. Elena smiled. How could I forget? Do you ever regret saying yes? James asked. To all of this? Elena reached across the table and took his hand. Not for a single second, she said. James squeezed her hand. I love you. I love you too. And then, because she couldn't help herself, Elena started to hum. Eben? Nandro Lontana. James smiled. Sing it, he said. Here. Here. So Elena stood up. And in the middle of the restaurant, 15 years after the first time, she sang. Her voice was older now. Not as strong. But it was wiser. Deeper. Full of a life well lived. The other diners stopped eating. They listened. And when she finished, they applauded. Elena sat back down, blushing. You're still magic, James said. Only because you believed I was, Elena replied. 20 years after that first night, James and Elena sat in their living room. They were both in their 70s now. James's hair was completely white. Elena moved slower, but her eyes were still bright. Their grandchildren were playing in the yard. Lily's daughter. Ben's twin boys. Can you believe we made it this far? Elena asked. James smiled. I knew we would. Liar. You were just as scared as I was. Maybe. but I was also sure. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you. For what? For asking me to sing. For seeing me. For not giving up. James kissed the top of her head. Thank you for saying yes. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the children laugh outside. Do you think they'll understand someday? Elena asked. How hard this was. How much it took to choose love after everything. Maybe, James said. Or maybe they'll just think we were lucky. Were we lucky? James thought about it. About the broken pieces they'd both been. About the fear and the doubt, and all the times they'd almost given up. No, he said finally. We weren't lucky. We were brave. Elena smiled. Outside, one of the grandchildren started singing. It was off-key and silly, but it was beautiful, because it was a voice being used, a voice being heard. And in the end, that's all any of us really want. To be heard, to be seen, to be loved. What did you think of this story? Share your favorite moment below. Sometimes love doesn't look like a fairy tale. Sometimes it looks like two broken people choosing to be brave enough to try again. It looks like singing when you're scared. It looks like opening the door when you want to hide. It looks like believing that you deserve to be loved, even when you don't feel lovable. And sometimes, love looks like a man in a restaurant, listening to a stranger sing and knowing somehow that his life is about to change. That's the magic. Not the grand gestures, but the small, quiet choices we make every day. To stay, to try, to love, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because in the end, that's what makes it real. The end.